Do you ever wonder what it really means to be human? That beyond the routines, the masks, and the daily hustle, there's a raw, messy, and beautiful reality unfolding right before our eyes. I'm Rick Watson, and this is Humaning, a podcast where I have honest conversations with everyday humans, and together we peel back the layers, dive into the chaos, and celebrate the magic of just being human. As you listen, notice how different parts of your story may appear in the story of others as we all just do our best to live, to feel, and to connect. Welcome to Humaning. Chris Slater, welcome to the podcast.
Hey mate, thanks for having me.
How you going?
I'm pretty good. A bit nervous.
Yeah?
Yeah. But no, overall life's going well.
Cool.
It's a good day.
Coming out of the shadows, so to speak. Is that why you're nervous?
Yeah, that's right. I think I'm used to operating in the background and not sticking my head out too far.
Yeah.
And not making too much of a fuss.
Yeah.
I think that's my pattern. So that's probably coming through.
Yeah, cool. Well, it's just you and me and the dog, and my mum will probably tune in, and maybe Joe. So like this, that's our audience.
Oh, that's terrifying.
Hi, mum.
It's all good.
I do like to do a bit of an official check-in. So kind of similar to what we do in Circle. Like, how are you right now, physically, mentally, emotionally? Like, what's it like to be you?
Okay. Physically, mentally, emotionally. Physical's easy. I was on the rail trail yesterday riding my bike, so my bum's sore.
I have a sore ass.
Yeah, it's because it's been too long. I bought a bike rack what was it? The Good Friday, the Black Friday sales.
Yeah.
So I put it together yesterday. So that gives you an idea of how long. But it was a beautiful day out there, and I guess I'm sunburnt as well, despite the best efforts of the sunscreen.
Nothing like a sunburnt ringer.
Yeah, well, it doesn't take much. I was probably just walking to the car this morning. And then mentally, I am... Oh, and let's go emotionally. We'll come back to mentally, I guess. Emotionally, I'm feeling some joy right now. Always enjoy coming around and having a chat with you. So feeling pretty happy and excited. I'm feeling, I had that trepidation that I mentioned earlier. Overall, I'm feeling hopeful for this week. And I'm hoping to get a whole lot of study done. So
Yeah. Hope's an interesting one, isn't it?
I think I've experienced more and more hope in my life as I experience more gratitude.
Yep.
I think there's been, when I accept more about what's good in my life and what's working, I can look for that more.
Yep.
I can hold it more.
Yep.
I think probably I had some negative voices that got in the way of hope.
Yeah.
So
The hope killers.
Yeah, so I have in turn killed the hope killers, depending on the day.
Cool.
And then cognitively, mentally, I'm in a good place as well. I just had a busy weekend with family, and although it was draining on the weekend, nothing like a good sleep to cure all woes. So I'm feeling refreshed and ready for this week.
Cool. Yeah, same. And I just want to jump in quickly before I do my check-in. Every time I finish a podcast, I'm like, oh, you forgot to say that thing about the check-in. So I'm going to say the thing about the check-in.
Thank you. Thanks for not leaving it till the end and forgetting it.
Not so much the actual doing of the check-in, but the reason I have it in this podcast is obviously for you and I to just do a check-in, but I actually put it in there as a reminder for people listening that they get to check in whenever they want.
Mm.
And this, when they're listening to this, it can just be a good reminder of like, oh, how am I physically? How am I mentally? Like, what stories are rolling through? What thoughts? And then what emotions are there? So I just wanted to bring that up, that this check-in is obviously for us and to, see where we're at. And I think it's a really great way to connect on a really basic level of like present moment awareness.
Yeah, I think something like that is something that's, I would say, easy to do and easy not to do. I read a book once called The Slight Edge, and it was all about the effect of compounding interest, but not in financial terms, but in terms of other avenues, other aspects of your life. Yep. And the little decisions that we make daily or regularly, which are simple to do and simple not to do, accumulate over time and lead to really massive positive change or negative change if you're consistently not doing these things. But they're really powerful. Yeah. And I'd say checking in with what's going on in your life regularly is probably one of those really powerful things that takes but a moment. Yeah. But gives serious momentum if you're in touch with what you're feeling all of the time.
As you're saying that, I'm thinking about like, what are the things that stop people wanting to do that? And I think it's that there's potentially elements of that I don't really want to see. I don't really want to know. If I'm feeling certain emotions, like I'd rather just keep busy and not feel it.
And by certain emotions, you mean basically anything except for happy and excited. Yeah, because I think that emotions, in particular, I mean, the cognitive and physical, I think we can be comfortable with unless we're in a really poor place with either of those. We can be comfortable admitting to ourselves how they're going, but the emotional is, well, for me, has been one of the most challenging to get in touch with. Yep. And I think a big part of that was because I was afraid of what I was going to find.
Mm. It's actually one thing I really appreciate about you. Like, we sit in circle together weekly, and what I appreciate about you in regards to the emotional check-in is the amount of layers that you can identify in one time. I really like that there's thought that goes into, I'm not just feeling joy, I'm also feeling hope and this and that and trepidation. And I appreciate that. And I think it's a really good reflection of how much time you've spent building that muscle of like emotional awareness.
Yeah, thank you. And it's exactly that, building that muscle. It's just practice. Yeah. Just practice. I mean, I've been doing it, if not daily, because, I'll admit that I don't do it daily.
Turn my back on that shit sometimes.
Yeah. But I've had a background of doing it a couple of times a week for nearly 10 years, I guess, right. In a formal setting, and then in an informal setting, doing it much more frequently in a recovery setting. So
cool. So I just wanted to bring that up because after I finished the podcast, I'm like, oh, you forgot to say that thing again. So that's kind of why we do check-ins. And my check-in is I'm feeling physically, I don't know what the word is for it. I had a really great weekend. It wasn't a very physical weekend, but it was very rewarding. We travelled down to Melbourne, just got home this last night, and this morning did a little workout downstairs. Didn't feel rushed today, so I felt like I had time. So it was a really, those sessions that you do in the gym that's like, I've just got to get in and out and get out of here. It was the opposite of that. Like, I had space and time. Really fun little workout. The dog hangs out with me downstairs when we train. So my body doesn't feel smashed, but it feels moved. I don't have any major like complaints right now, which feels good. Mm-hmm. Mentally, feeling really clear. There's not a lot of chatter. There's not a lot of the bandwidth seems open. I think it's probably the way to put it. Last week was very different. Had a short week that came off the back of a Brisbane weekend and then straight into a short week of work where I crammed everything into 4 days and then flew to Melbourne for our program down there. So the mental space this week compared to last week is very different. And I'm fucking here for it.
Sounds very different.
Thank you. And then emotionally, I just feel a bit touched. Is that an emotion? Sounds a little bit inappropriate. I've been emotionally touched.
Show us on the doll where your emotion is. You're going to have to edit that out. Sorry, mate.
Joe and I did our first program this weekend, and I was just touched to see people that I'd only recently met this year just step in with courage and bravery and vulnerability and honesty, and it always gets me. Like, it always, like, I'm not sure what the knock-on emotion is. Like, I feel joy and I feel, like, privileged to be in the room, and it's really, like, my heart opens up, and what I notice is what's the word? It makes me more emotional to what I'm feeling, because it feels safe to do that in those containers, similar to our circle.
Yeah.
So yeah, I'm feeling maybe a little bit raw. I touched on some stuff about my dad and a few things yesterday that I didn't really have an intention, or that just sort of came up because it was an emotional environment. So there's some stuff in there that's been nice to retouch on, but today, feeling really settled emotionally, feeling really, just after that big crazy week.
Yeah, thank you for that check-in.
That was a long check-in, wasn't it?
Look, man, you should have gone first, and then I realised, okay, I've got to pull it together here and get a really good check-in.
Let's not compare our
check-in anxiety.
Sorry. Maybe I just did that for me. I needed that. How the hell do we know each other? Where did we meet?
Okay, so worked out it was about 10 years ago, I think, perhaps 11 now. And I hit this country town from Brisbane needing to move my body. I had a background in doing some Krav Maga, some fighting techniques to move my body and stay in shape. And they didn't have any of that down here. So I got into the crazy world of CrossFit.
Dun, dun, dun.
And lo and behold, there you were. So CrossFit Murbar was the day.
It's pretty fun, wasn't it?
It was surprisingly fun, actually. Because if you'd said to me how fun could getting up at 5 a.m. to go in the freezing cold or the stinking hot and run around and lift weights and all that sort of thing, that's not something that I would have...
It's on the top 5 fun list.
No, but it was fairly consistently fun after about 15 minutes when I finally woke up.
Yeah, same. Same. What brought you down to Mooloolah from Brisbane?
Well, let's see. In Brisbane, I was working up there and had moved through a couple of different clinics or practices. I'm a chiropractor, and I wasn't getting what I wanted from the businesses. I wanted to get more involved, and I was up there as an employee or an associate.
Yeah.
And I wanted to take it further and run a practice and really deliver, really build something. Mm-hmm. And it wasn't happening up there. So we thought we wondered where we could go, where we had a 2-year-old child, where we could go, where we could give him a wonderful life, potentially have a bigger family. And although we resisted it, all roads led towards this little country town that my wife grew up in.
She grew up here?
Yeah, her dad was a GP in this town for like 30 years.
Right.
So
I do remember that, yeah.
Yeah, so Lucy...
I just forget that.
Lucy grew up here in Murwillumbah. I grew up in a very similar sort of a area in the Sunshine Coast hinterland.
Can I pause you?
Yeah.
Just realised, we've got our first husband and wife team on the podcast.
Uh-huh.
Lucy has been on the podcast, a good friend of mine as well. And I think it's episode 4. So if you want to hear all the background about Chris, no, not really.
All the dirty secrets.
It's actually a really good episode, and it'd be cool to contrast, your episode and her episode. Sorry, I just had to throw that in. I forgot about it.
No, good. Yeah, so I think the vibe here is very similar to the sunny coast hinterland where I grew up. And I thought that was a great upbringing, a great chance to have some adventure in my life as a kid, and for the same for my son. And so down we came. We stayed with Lucy's family for a while and then got into our own setup. And it's grown from there.
Did you come straight down to your own practice here?
I started a practice here immediately.
Yep.
And worked a few days in Brisbane, a few days down here, just
a
back and
transition.
forth. So a few nights up there, a few days down here, and did that for a few months, probably about 4 months or something, until I was ready to let it go.
Till the word got out.
Yeah, well, there was a bit of getting the word out, but the good thing about country towns is everyone knows everyone, and also being the son-in-law of one of the longest serving country GPs in the area.
Some networks there.
There was some networks there.
Yep.
And some, perhaps a little bit of rapport by association or trust by association.
Yeah. And you're pretty fucking good at what you do, so there's that.
Well,
That helps. You know, you can't have a career unless you're actually giving some value.
That usually helps me more than it hinders me. Not every time.
Yeah. So moved down, start a practice. Eddie was 2.
Eddie was 2. Let's see. We came down here, got into that practice, built it up. Lucy was looking after Eddie.
Yeah.
So she hadn't returned to the workforce at that time. And eventually she did, working in a few businesses around town, but mainly involved as my practice manager.
Yeah.
And as she helped to build the business, we got it to a level where I felt ready to do what I dreamed to do, which was to have a larger practice with associates helping out.
Yep.
We bought a beautiful big Queenslander in the middle of town and commenced filling it with excellent people.
Can I pause you there?
Yeah.
What was the inner world of Chris like at that point in time? So I'm picturing like all the external practical things. So like building a practice, just bought a thing, going to take on associates. What was your inner world like?
All right. So my inner world at that time, going back 10 years ago, was fairly chaotic.
Yeah.
Which my external world tended to match. Shit, funnily enough. And at that stage in time, I didn't realise the relationships between the two.
Yep.
Between the chaos inside and the chaos around me. And so my inner world was filled with, or I was filled with, a sense that I had big things to achieve, a sense that I needed to do that, and had needed to have a really big and special impact on the world. So that was part of what I later recognised as arrogance.
Yep.
So I had a lot of arrogance and a lot of denial going on inside me at that time. And I figured that the reason that there was chaos in my outer world was because I wasn't in charge enough. Because I'd been working for other people, because there were other circumstances that I wasn't in charge of. And I figured that if I was the big boss, if I was calling all the shots, then everything would fall into place and, you know, the riches of the world and success would flow my way.
And is that where you came across the realisation around the arrogance part?
No, that took a while, mate. I'm a bit of a slow learner.
Well, I'm just thinking about, like, not many people in their lives at all would have that awareness about themselves, because that's a really big ego one, isn't it?
Yeah.
It's one you don't want to admit.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, those two came to me because, all right, so the time frame, we moved around a few times in this town. There's a lot of, I guess, people having to move around in rentals and that sort of thing.
Yeah.
So we moved around a little bit before we bought our home, and that was contributing to feelings of disempowerment and uncertainty.
Yep.
And also getting this practice up and running, hiring associates, having to fire associates or having them leave because they weren't the right fits. So there was a lot going on, and that was really triggering for me, my anger, my frustration. And so I was bringing that home,
Yeah.
my frustration, and it was coming out sideways because my solution to it was to be more in control and try harder. And, you know, in my mind, if I saw areas that were out of control, I was quick to point those out. And since I didn't have anyone to point them out to at work, because I was the boss, I would point them out at home. And
what was the impact of that in your household?
well, it was great. Everything was done as I asked, and everyone was
that
perfect.
went seamlessly. I said no one ever.
Yeah, it went down like a lead balloon, Rick. So I was controlling at home, in particular with my son.
Yep.
He was 2 or 3, and so they're a special ball of energy.
I've just spent the weekend with a 3-year-old, so I'm hearing you.
Yeah, you got it.
Yeah.
And my wife said, "Look, this isn't good for you or for him. We need to do something about this." And I said, "Well, I don't know what to do." So I went and saw a man in a nearby town who was an acupuncturist.
Yeah.
And we had been told that he was good at dealing with emotions. And since I wasn't particularly good at dealing with emotions, I figure I'd outsource the issue.
Can you sort my emotions, please?
Please put a needle in me and sort the emotions.
That's awesome.
Anyway,
He's going to be busy, that dude.
yeah, look, he's a legend. And he helped me and taught me a lot. But, you know, it wasn't just by putting needles in me. It was by asking me questions and talking to me and giving insights. He had a history in a couple of areas that I was not familiar with at the time. One was psychotherapy, where he'd done some training and done a lot of personal work. And so that informed his practice. And another area was in recovery. He had a long history of 20 years or more in the 12-step recovery program.
Yep.
And that also had changed him and his life. And he introduced to me the concept that, for starters, he introduced to me the concept that I was angry. He said to me, "Chris, what would you say if I said to you, right?" He said, "What would you rate your anger right now out of 10? I think I said 2 or 3 or something. And he said, "What would I say if you were if I said you were 10 out of 10?
I'd be fucking angry.
Well, I said I wouldn't believe you.
Yeah.
And I would, I said, or perhaps I'd have to take your word for it because I don't feel that.
Yeah.
And he said, "Well, that's the thing, mate. You're the only one in the room who doesn't feel it at the moment."
Ouch.
Yeah. He was good at delivering eye-openers like that one.
He has a sharp knife.
Yeah, but he did it all with love. And so he took me through that, and he supported me with the acupuncture and with directing me towards a recovery program for codependence. And and just by also, he supported me by having lived the same problems and recovered through it.
Yep.
And so by example.
There was a bit in there that I just want to jump on. I'm interested in the connection because you used the word codependence and recovery for that.
Yep.
What was the connection, or how did it practically play out with the connection between your anger and codependence? Like, how do those two fit or not fit together?
Yep. So just for starters, I'm still working that. That's work in progress for me. And
Can you just so I'm clear on what your understanding of that is, what is codependency?
well, I would just call it your feelings being impacted by other people, or your sense of well-being, your sense of being okay, being impacted by other people. There's better definitions out there. People can look them up and find out what's right for them. But for me, my codependency shows up as my serenity is disturbed by actions, events, and other people. And my recovery is growing and managing that so that I'm not so dependent on what's going on for others. So rather than being, I'm not completely independent, completely unaffected by others.
It's basically impossible.
But more interdependent, which I think is a healthier place, where I was very much unaware of what was going on internally for me. I was only vaguely aware of that. And rather than modifying my own feelings, emotions, actions, I would try to change other people so that I felt differently. And my anger was probably the biggest thing among them, that I would try to change other people because of, and that would then lead me to try to change other people.
It's like a loop, that, isn't it?
Yeah, huge
I get
loop.
angry because, and then
I get angry because, and then because I'm angry, this is what I do. So there was a huge link between my feelings and my controlling behaviour. I was hugely in denial of a lot of stuff that was going on internally for me.
That's the bit that I want to pause on, because it's like, what did it feel like to have this new awareness of yourself?
Really uncomfortable.
Yeah, fully.
We say checking in with your feelings is easy to do, easy not to do, but I suppose it's easy for me to do now because I have done it for a long time. But to begin with, it was completely foreign. To even realise that I was a 10 out of 10 white-hot angry all of the time was really, I had to take it on faith. I had to say, well, okay, if you say so. And then I got more and more in touch with it. I think perhaps one analogy is, once upon a time I had a sore tooth, and I went to the dentist when I was working in Brisbane before I came down here. And he said, you've got a stress fracture in one of your molars. And I said, that's weird. How would that happen? And he said, well, do you grind in your sleep? And I said, no, I don't. I think I sleep with my mouth open. I get belted by my wife. I don't. Sorry, Lucy. But I said, no, I don't do it during the night. And he said, well, then you must be grinding your teeth during the day. And I said, no, I'm relaxed during the day. I'd be aware of that. And he said, okay, fine. And he put a cap on it. And I went back to work. And the cap didn't fit perfectly first try. And one of my team said something to me, and I got an instant jolt of pain in my tooth, and I realised that I was clamping my teeth down. And I relaxed because I had that biofeedback, that feedback mechanism on my jaw saying that hurts. And then minutes later, my patient did something, and then my tooth hurt because I was clamping down on it. And all of a sudden I had this huge insight into, oh crap, I'm biting down, clamping down my teeth all the time. And that's because I was angry. But
there's some symbolic nature.
Yeah, that's very symbolic. And later on, I started to have this awareness, and I started to see it more and more and more. And as the veil was lifted, I saw initially that I was angry or reactive quite a lot. And then with further work, I saw that underneath that there was often fear, and my anger was a response to the fear, and the controlling was a response to the fear. And then with years more work after that, I got in touch with sadness, and found that underneath the fear was there was a layer of numb, then a layer of anger, then a layer of fear, then a big layer of sadness, and then 64 flavors of other feelings underneath that were not as big layers, but access to all of those feelings, which I'd been unaware of, except as a chaotic storm of emotions going around my head when I got stimulated. So that storm would either be quiet or it would be, much busier, depending on how activated I was.
Yeah.
But that was kind of my range of emotion. I was either activated and in that storm and reactive and angry, or I was
Quietly grinding your teeth.
Yeah, quietly grinding my teeth. So that all took a while to break through. The general support that I got from learning through codependency, through the readings, and through hearing other people share their stories, and hearing my story come out of other people's mouths, and starting to appreciate aspects of me that I'd been in denial of. And through the sometimes gentle, sometimes not so gentle insights from my acupuncturist pal, leading me to see things that I may not have been ready to see initially. So those were all pretty big leaps. And then after I'd been going with that for a little while, and I really enjoyed going down to see him, because I'd go down on a Thursday afternoon, I'd have my acupuncture session, and I'd come out of my acupuncture session, I'd go across the road and I'd buy a bottle of wine, and I'd go out with my family and have dinner and have a glass of wine with dinner, or go home and have dinner, have a glass of wine with dinner. He heard that. I think my wife tipped him onto it.
She's onto it.
And he said, "You what? You've come in here to see me, to feel your feelings, and then you go straight out."
I'm integrating it with some wine.
Yeah, you go straight out and do that. He said, that's the last thing you need. In fact, I think he said you need alcohol like you need cancer, or like you need a hole in your head or something. Yeah. He said that's going to stop you feeling what you're feeling, and so that's kind of going in the opposite direction. I thought, well, that's really interesting, because I figured I might have a glass of wine here or there, I might have a beer after mowing the lawn, but I didn't feel like I was using it for any particular reason. But when I looked at the pattern, I was like, oh, well, there you go. I'm doing it every Thursday right after getting all my emotions activated. Maybe there's something to this. So I agreed with him to stop drinking. Yep. And I said, all right, I'll stop drinking for 6 months. And again, we made really good progress during that time, because I was not dodging or avoiding my emotions.
Was that hard?
Yeah, it was, because although I was not drinking much or often, when I was drinking, in hindsight, it was having an effect of moderating my emotions and numbing everything down, which it turned out I was using as a tool, as a crutch.
Yeah.
So,
and it kind of makes sense too.
Oh, absolutely.
Why your system would want that.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. It's an incredible tool. I mean, I'm sure it's a reason it's so popular, and not everyone. He was able to tell me that not everyone who drinks uses it like that.
Yeah.
But for me, that's how it was going.
Yeah.
So,
that's a good point.
So I, he said to me, look, there's people out there who drink normally and they don't feel this way, and for them it's not an issue, but for me it was. Anyway, I did my 6 months. And then I said to him, look, I'm really worried about this 6 months coming up, and, how I'm going to start drinking again like those people who do it really well. And he said, who said anything about starting drinking again? I said, I thought we had a deal. And he said, no. And I said, oh, well, this isn't fair. You're springing it on me that I can't drink ever again. And he's saying, well, just the way that you're feeling so much about this tells me that you might have a problem with alcohol. And I was really pissed off about that, being shown that side of myself, which again I was initially quite in denial of, but I continued to not drink. I think I can be pretty willful with myself. And in this case, my will said, well, I won't drink. I'll show him I've got no problem with alcohol.
Yeah.
And in 12-step, anytime there's a behavior or a problem that's an issue for you, they don't tend to make lifelong commitments, but they tend to encourage taking things, they say, one day at a time.
Yeah.
So I say, well, I've done 6 months. I'll keep going and see how I go. And while I don't feel comfortable saying that I'll not have a glass of wine when I'm 85, for now that's okay. And that's where I am at the moment.
Right. So how long's that been?
It's been, I think it's 8 years this year.
Yeah, well done.
So it's been over 7 years. And with that being said, I mean, I have, what have I done? I've had a sip. Like I can have a sip if it's a particularly nice something that I see there and I want to remember what it tasted like.
Yeah.
But I wouldn't have more than a sip because I don't want to feel it.
Yeah.
Or I suppose I should say I want to keep feeling.
Yeah.
And I don't want to lose track of my feelings.
Yeah.
So
the Chris that's on the other side of that, the Chris that's on the other side of the work with the codependency, the anger, the drinking, how is the Chris now different to the Chris back then?
Well, I suppose the way I'm different now, and I guess I'll have to touch on the bridging between the two of those.
Yeah.
I have a lot more acceptance in my life. I'm a lot calmer and I have a lot more space in my life.
When you say acceptance, is that self, other, both? Like what?
Yeah, I think they come together.
Yeah.
I think that the one that needed to come first for me was acceptance of self.
Yep.
I think I admitted to myself that I could accept others more first, but I don't think I really was able to stop judging so much and chill out until I accepted myself more.
Yep.
And that was something that came through that work. That was something that came through sharing all my resentments with another person and getting it all off my shoulders, getting it all off my back. All the stuff I'd been carrying around with me, all the anger and resentment I'd been carrying around with me for my life. Just being able to blurt it all out and see that I had a role in all of that.
Yeah, that's the big one, isn't it?
Yeah, I think just spraying it and venting it, there's some power to that because it's somewhat relieving, but the most important part of that part of the recovery is seeing that all of those areas that I had resentments, there was some part of me that was involved in that or played a role in that. And while I might not have caused certain things, like I didn't cause my parents to split up, the elements of me that resisted that or that judged that or that held on to anger about that, those were the parts that were really causing me the big problems in my life.
Yeah. Even just having the realization of the role that you played in that stuff is fucking huge.
Yeah, it was
like life-changing huge.
Life-changing huge. Yeah. That literally did change my life.
Yeah.
And through all of this, I became increasingly aware of how much I was doing to support others. And that had been in my programming or my modelling was to look after others.
Bit of a fixer?
Yeah, a bit of a fixer, a bit of a rescuer. And that was how I gained security in my early life. Because it was just me and my sister and my mum from when I was 2.
Yeah.
So one way I learnt to feel safe and loved was to look after other people. And that was a way of passive manipulation. I was changing what other people were doing so that I could feel safe. And on the surface, it looked altruistic and beautiful and caring. But ultimately, it was for selfish reasons.
Can I tell you a story?
Yeah.
Because the fixing, rescuing thing is really interesting. This last weekend down at the event thing, the group that we had, it's about making space. And we were all setting up the container of what are the guardrails for this group. And for me, one of those, and we have a similar one in our men's circle, is no fracking. And fracking is fixing, rescuing, advice, or caretaking. Because within 20 minutes, when we're doing check-ins and open shares and stuff in this first circle, when we were there on Friday night, the fixing and the rescuing just jumped out automatically, and it was the same thing. It was just like, and I'm like, all right, this is a really good time to point out that part of this group, we are going to do our very best not to fix, rescue, give advice, or caretake each other. And there was people there that's like, I'm out. Like, that is my whole identity.
Yeah, there's nothing else for me here.
Yeah, I'm done. But it was really interesting to just see a group of humans realize that for the first time, of the amount of time, energy, effort that goes into the fixing, rescuing, advice, caretaking of other people.
Oh my God, it's exhausting.
Mm.
It is so exhausting. And then when I was exhausted, I'd be angry. Because I'd just spent all this time looking after people.
I'm doing all this shit for you.
Doing all this shit.
Where's the love?
Where was my appreciation? Where was my damn reward? You know, where was my feeling of feeling great? I felt like shit.
Fuck, I've got to do more now, and I'm going to be resentful about that.
Yeah. Yeah. It was so tiring. It was so tiring.
Yeah.
And, you know, having an environment where one can be heard without having the response be to fix, rescue, give advice, or caretake, was also life-changing. And I don't think I could have done any of this without that.
Yeah.
And I came across that in recovery initially. In recovery, if you go along to a meeting, you share what's going on for you. And then at the end of it, people say thanks, and that's it.
Yeah.
They say, thanks, Chris, and it's over. No advice. No, you should do this.
Yeah.
No, oh, that reminds me about in my life when blah, 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 because you couldn't really comment on someone's share. It was, I got to say it and it was done. And then someone else got to say their piece and they were done, and I couldn't do anything about it.
Yeah.
I had to shut up.
So the little fixer was like,
yeah,
shackled.
And I just had to listen and see them. And if I had feelings about that, well, great. I had to breathe and listen to and feel those feelings. And that was my big tool at that time from my acupuncturist, was breathing. He said, just breathe. It got me through that. And sometimes the serenity prayer to just to let go and realize what I could and couldn't change.
I think it's a really interesting part, just like this aspect of listening with presence. And what I mean by that is like listening with presence, of being really present of what's happening while someone's speaking to you. And my old pattern was to think about what I'm going to say next to make sure that I'm one-upping, or my ego is satisfied, or that I've got the answers, or I'm fixing. And you know, we do a fair bit of this in Circle, but last weekend we did when you're hearing someone's story, you're just going to feel what they're saying and share the impact of their words that they had on you, and have a full stop at the end. So when I heard you say that, it made me feel sad, full stop. It was challenging because they essentially had a room full of fixers and rescuers. And it was like, oh, but it was also really fucking cool to see people potentially for the first time in some instances be like, oh, that was really easy, and I felt seen and heard, you know.
I've seen that in Circle with you, and I really appreciate the way that you bring that to the Circle. And yeah, seeing people in our circle who for the first time and they're often the people who are providing advice, jumping in and doing that. But once they get it, once they really understand that it's okay to just let it be, if someone's in circle feeling emotion, you don't have to pick up a box of tissues and pass it to them. You don't have to pat them on the knee.
Yeah.
You don't have to give them advice. Just be there.
Yeah. And
Just
I think it's really interesting to because part of that is I feel an old story would be I feel uncomfortable unless I'm doing something about that, and I'm trying, the reassurance or the advice or whatever.
Yeah, because how will you know that I care if I'm not visibly doing something to help you? Yeah.
And I'm going to share something about last week in Gestalt. The weekend before, I was in therapy, doing therapy, and my client had tears and emotion, and I even just said your tears are welcome here, a really simple comment. And then the facilitator, that comment was picked out by one of the other students who was observing as a good leveler of comfort and safety and yada yada yada, all that stuff. Not dismissing that, but. And then the facilitator said, "Did you say that for you, or did you say that for her?"
we had the same thing. That's a really good pickup.
I was just
really good pickup.
Fuck.
Yeah. When sharing in recovery, there's one paramount rule, which is no crosstalk, and that's defined as no physical or verbal interaction, no physical or verbal response to what someone has shared or is sharing. And we all thought, yeah, that's great, no crosstalk. But the guy that my ACU, he pointed out to us that sometimes we were cross-talking just by nodding, or by laughing, because we were trying to interact, trying to modify, trying to give them support. Yeah, you're on the right track, or
so the fixing and rescuing can be nuanced.
It can be so subtle,
non-verbal.
Yep. So I really relate to that.
Yeah.
Because I was definitely a nodder.
Yeah, I was like, damn. And the question I got from that is did I say that to show her that I'm comfortable with her emotions? For me, to prove that I could sit with it, be like, you're a big boy, I'm strong, I can stay with this, and make her realise that? Or was I just big noting myself and saying, I'm good with this, So it's interesting.
These questions are worth asking.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm not sure, because I think for me now sometimes I'll second guess myself if I'm nodding along to a share or if I'm when you say something. Sometimes I'll second guess myself. Am I doing this in a cross-talky way, or am I just nodding because I agree?
Yeah.
So I'm not sure if I'll ever get to the bottom of it, but definitely I got a lot of value from asking those questions to begin with and checking it. When I found that it was in an unhealthy or not toxic, but maybe in an unhealthy way.
Yeah, and I think there's a bit of a blurry line between genuinely caring and you think about it with our kids, the lines are different because we're the responsible parent, so that what could be classified as fixing and rescuing is also parental responsibility and obligation.
Yeah.
So there's no real right and wrong. It's just I think the thing for me underneath it is can I build my awareness of when it pops up, even in the nuanced form, because it's a lot less now for me of the explicit, I think you should do this, or the advice without asking, that sort of stuff is a lot less, but it's it still shows up. Still that little unconscious need of feeling important or feeling valuable or worthy by being there for someone.
Yeah, I think, and particularly I found this in CODA too, in Codependence Anonymous, which is to say that these things can be really subtle and nuanced. The substance programs, if you're in Narcotics Anonymous, NA I think it is, I mean, it's pretty clear you're either having a drug or you're not having a drug.
Yeah.
You're drinking alcohol or you're not. You're gambling or you're not.
CODA's a bit different.
CODA's a bit different, and I think similar in other relationship programs, like there's sex and love programs as well, where it gets a little bit squirrely there too. But in CODA, it can be quite blurry and quite subtle. And so everyone has to work out what it is for them, because there can be similarities with others, and there can be differences. with others, and my codependency can look different to someone else's, or my altered behaviours and my fracking can look different to the next guy.
Yeah, definitely. And I think it's all of this is a part of getting to know ourselves. And the thing I want to jump back to on a practical level is can we do this with a little bit of grace and a little bit of kindness of the clunkiness of the process? We're going to fuck it up. Oh, geez, I fixed the shit out of that the other day.
Not if, but when.
Yeah. And, sometimes awareness is in the moment, really. Sometimes it's, 5 minutes later. Sometimes it's a day later. Sometimes it's a year later. But it still has value no matter when the awareness is realised,
Yeah, even years later. And sometimes it begins, sometimes it's in that reverse order. Sometimes it is years later that we first start to have the awareness. And then it's gradually we get towards in the moment or present time awareness. But that can come and go.
Yeah. It's making me think of acceptance now because all this stuff's just really fresh from the weekend. We had a really nice group and we touched on some acceptance stuff, and I'm just thinking about the fracking aspect and the acceptance part of that. And what I really believe with acceptance is that when we can see the light and the shadow of the behaviour or whatever the pattern is, because there will be one, there will be a benefit and there will be a consequence, and we can see both sides, I feel like that green lights us more to acceptance. Rather than if we're focusing on the shitty bit, the shamey bit of fixing, I just want to feel good no matter what, that's harder to accept. But if we have the light side of I'm not a fucking good person and I want to help and my intentions are good, and do you know what I mean?
Yeah, and that's why I think for me acceptance of myself was a really key step, because that came with forgiveness of myself. Forgiveness.
The F word.
Yeah, of when I'm not perfect. And at some point, I had to come to the acceptance that I wasn't perfect, and that, geez, have I got there? That one was tricky. I could come to an intellectual acceptance of course, no one can be perfect, but I think it's still in me to try to be perfect so much of the time. And sometimes
we get rewarded for that.
Well, it looks on the surface like there are big rewards for performing and for doing well, for doing in general. But yeah, more and more, I had to realise that I wasn't perfect. And, there were little phrases like done is better than perfect, or ready, fire, aim, or all those things I relied on.
Good enough.
Yeah. All those things that sort of got me through. But ultimately, it was just realising that I'm not perfect, you're not perfect, everyone's shit stinks just the same. And previously I used to get upset when someone else's shit was stinking, but that's because I was in denial of mine. And through all this work, that denial melted away more and more, and I was able to be more comfortable with being imperfect.
Yeah.
And with that acceptance is what led me to be where I am now, because I was able to see that a big part of my life was dedicated to a job or a business that I'd created as old Chris, the one who was perfect,
the striver,
the one who was going to have a huge impact on the world and be materially successful, but also loved by all and respected in my field, as a leader in the field, as a excellent parent and husband and friend, and all of that. And I realized, whoa, I've got so much that I'm carrying around with me, and it is so exhausting that I'm killing myself. And for what? For resentment, which is what I was sort of getting from it all.
Yeah.
So I kind of burned it all down. I sold the building that had my practice in.
Yep.
I let all my team go, which was really sad. And it took me years to do it because of A, how much I love them, and B, how responsible I felt as their employer for making sure that they weren't let down, because I felt they'd be disappointed in me
It's a big one for you, isn't it?
Yeah, it was huge. If I were to let the business go, which I needed to do for years to get to where I am now, but if I let that go, how much would I disappoint all my staff? How much would I disappoint the clients that we couldn't see anymore because we were downsizing? And I was just so terrified of disappointing everyone, of being a disappointment. Yeah, it wasn't disappointing someone, it was being a disappointment for me.
Because that's the other side of that story that was created of old Chris, wasn't it?
Yeah. So we got there. Through the 12 step, through therapy, through feeling a disappointment, I was pushed. And financially we were pushed. I mean, it was more and more expensive to run a business that I was seeing 70% of the revenue out of the business. So I was keeping the place afloat. It was just no longer viable. So I was pushed internally and externally, and I let it go. And that was huge. It took so much off my shoulders. Prior to that, I'd had a period of depression. Of probably 3 to 6 months of just feeling so disillusioned and so sad and angry, and that anger turned inwards that depression sometimes described as. And it was, I think, letting that place go. And what was really killing me was I wanted to sell the place, but it took so long to sell. We had a flood in town here. Well, we had COVID. We had the flood, and it just made the place so difficult to move. But eventually it did. All the time, it took 18 months, and all that time, it was already a year or two after I should have done it. And then I had to, after I made the decision, I had to wait another 18 months.
It's like running the marathon and seeing the finish line, but you can't quite get there.
Yeah, it was just...
I'm fucked, but I've just got to get this
It seemed like such
bit.
a moving target, that someone was taking that end of the rainbow away from me. We got there. And having got there, I'd simplified everything. I'd just operate out of a little room now, and I just have me to worry about. The overheads are a fraction of what they were. My energy output in terms of looking after everyone else has given way to having space to look after myself. So I went back and did things like join the gym again, or, went and did some Pilates, or even, God forbid, went fishing. Doing things for me.
You actually love.
Yeah, things that I was always dreaming of doing but never had the time, or never made the time to do.
I'm really interested about this part because our program in Melbourne's called Making Space, and it's essentially what you just did. So you had this business that was taking up so much space in your practical world, in your financial world, in your mental, emotional world. And you finally got to the point where you could bring that back down to a way more manageable, way less responsible, just you. And what I'm hearing is there was space to look after yourself. There was space to find some joy, go on fishing trips. And what else emerged from that space for you?
Well, I'll cover the reality first. What emerged from that space was fear. Cool. Because all of a sudden, my direction of being the big shot, having the successful business that was going to be financially supportive of me, whether I was there or not, these ideas disappeared. They went out the window, and I had to say, okay, well, that's not a thing. And so the fear set in. My wife, Lucy, had a lot of fear for me because she also, we both had expectations on me being the big provider. And all of a sudden that image shifted for a bit. And so what came after that? Well, initially I said, I don't know what's coming after that, and I'm okay with it because all I know is that what I was doing wasn't it for me.
That's that liminal space, isn't it?
Yeah.
Between certainty and uncertainty.
Yeah, and so I had to step into that, a big scary step of faith.
What was that like?
Well, I mean, it was scary.
Yeah.
But I think both because of all the work that I'd done in the various areas, it felt so good. There was fear, but geez, it felt good because it felt like after years of beating my head against a wall or being stuck, maybe wheels spinning in the mud, I was moving. I didn't know where to.
But there was movement.
But there was finally some movement. And so it was a huge relief. The fear, look, for me, the fear of doing it was not as big as the fear of being stuck like that for the rest of my life.
Pause.
Yeah. I mean, I feel myself tearing up on that one.
Yeah. That's a really powerful sentence. The fear of doing it wasn't as great as the fear of being stuck in it for the rest of your life.
Yeah.
What's behind that emotion there now?
Oh, God, that emotion of being trapped.
Yeah.
That emotion of being miserable or not feeling like I'm being me. Feeling like I'm living a lie.
Incongruent.
Yeah. Feeling like I'm living a big lie was how I felt. And no matter what I did, I'd have to wake up and do it again the next day.
And smile.
And smile.
Yeah.
Exactly. Because through smiling, that's how I got my love back from people.
Yep.
Through being the big hero of, how are you doing? I'm great. Thanks for asking. That was, oh, God, so difficult.
Yeah, I can see that.
Thank God that is something that I was able to move past.
Thank Chris.
Well, you know, different people have different concepts of God, whether it's a old dude in the sky or a higher sense of self.
Yep.
I've found when I had a big rejection of the old dude in the sky, because I went to a Christian school and had a lot of resentments around that, and I put a lot of my daddy issues onto that as well.
Yep.
But when and I never really felt great about prayer either, but when I directed my prayer instead of outwards, I started directing it inwards. I really felt some connection.
Yeah, right.
And I really felt...
To a higher power.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah, to something. To something greater than this little dude running around feeling chaos and causing chaos in an effort to try and grasp some serenity. So, yeah, thank Chris.
Thank Chris and thank
God. Thank every person or event that led me to being able to grow and move through that.
And if we stop there, it's like, if we think about the external support, like the scaffold that was around you, it's extensive.
Huge. Yeah, I had a huge support network.
Yeah. And I think it's a really interesting point to bring up, because often when I speak to people who are just starting the awareness process, one of their biggest blocks is the ability to ask for support, because when they ask for support, in their eyes, it's a sign of weakness, or I haven't got my shit together, or... So I think one of the biggest hurdles is that first little bit of like, I need help.
Yeah.
And I can't do it on my own.
Well, I mean, in recovery terms, those are the first steps.
Yeah.
Admit you have a problem. Admit you need help.
Yeah.
And seek help.
Yeah.
That's steps 1, 2, and 3.
Yeah. And there's shame in that. There's shame in having to admit for some people that they need help.
Yeah, well, the illusion of not needing help, of being okay on our own, it's such a big lie, because we know we're not okay.
Yeah.
And it's such a energy-consuming lie to deny all the evidence that we're not okay. And it's such a relief when we can accept that we need help.
Yeah, and share that reality.
Yeah, it's really uncomfortable. Steps 1, 2, and 3 can be really uncomfortable. And we don't have to be talking about them in recovery terms. Just those 3 steps.
Yeah.
Accepting that that you've got a problem with something in your life. Accepting that you need help with it, and then asking for help.
Yeah.
Those are big, bigger than they sound, but so important and so valuable.
And cool to look back retrospectively and be like, oh yeah, there was that, and there was that, and there was that, and there was that. And I like using the word scaffold because it's like when I fall down, there's something to hold me up.
Yeah. No. I feel like if I didn't have that scaffolding or those support networks around me, I wouldn't have made it as far as I have in the time that I have. Yeah, I've definitely been supported, scaffolded, and standing on the shoulders of the people around me in that regard.
Cool. And then I don't even know how long we've been going, but I was going to say.
Well, you wanted to know once I opened up that space.
Yeah, that's the last piece of the puzzle, isn't it?
Yeah, once I opened up that space, what came next? And so for me, after backing off on work, I got bored.
This is boring.
Yeah, because, hang on, just fishing and looking after myself in the gym
doing a bit of work.
and, talking in men's groups. This is all great, but I don't know, maybe it was that voice of grandeur in my head, or maybe it was my higher self calling. But I finally had space to see that I wanted something still. And I ended up realizing that my childhood dream of being a doctor, which I wanted to be a medical doctor from when I was like 5, that was still with me. And it had been sort of popping its head in over the years. Medicine was something that I was always going to do, and I did a degree after school in science, and I applied for medicine, and I was offered a place. And then right at the last minute, because they offered a place, they said, fine, just finish your degree and come join us. And so I didn't finish my degree. I bailed on the exams. I didn't go. I jumped on a plane and went overseas snowboarding instead, which was not conducive to finishing degrees. I panicked and got the hell out of there. And I realised, oh, hang on a second, I've got some big issues with medicine. I guess Dad was a doctor, and I felt like I didn't see him and put some of that on the profession. I felt some hesitation with where medicine was going in terms of waiting for people to get sick and then putting them on a drug for the rest of their life, was the view that I had when I said no to it. So I went in a different direction, but years later, I guess having come full circle, I thought, no, I'm helping people and I need to know more to help people more, because I want to go deeper. And there are some people within medicine now who I really respect and who know a hell of a lot. Fields of medicine that have sprung up in the last 20 years of looking at the body in a really holistic way, which I think was perhaps left to the side for a while there, and some areas still do. But I thought, I'm interested in that. I want to do that. So I decided I want to do medicine, and that is where I'm at now. I've I've sat the entrance exams, done well there. I've got to go through a few hurdles. But I'm hoping in the next year or two to be studying medicine, and then to be eventually like a 50-year-old new grad who gets to go and do horrendous hours in some hospital, but then eventually get into integrative or functional medicine, or maybe something that strikes my fancy along the way. But opening up my life to something more, and that's what that space has given me. Having pulled all those big rocks out of the backpack that I was carting around, I can stand up tall instead of being hunched over, crippled under the weight of them. I can stand up tall and see, no, this is where I'm going to next.
Yep. I have questions.
Bring your questions.
I think the first thing's more of an observation. It's like, I'm also on the second year of a 4-year study, and I'll hopefully be finishing when I'm 50.
Mm-hmm.
So like there's some parallels there of just like, I really appreciate and get inspired by people that go after it in the second half of life, essentially.
Yeah.
We're not quite in the second, but you know.
Good as.
Yeah. And so I really take inspiration from you in your path on that. So there's that. The other part is, how do you not turn this into the same thing?
That is a great question, and there's one that the little voice on my shoulder does ask me that. How do I avoid turning this into the same thing? And I suppose the way that I will achieve that is by doing what I'm doing now, which is growing.
Yep.
12-step recovery, men's group, therapy. They've led to such huge changes in me as a person that I'm already practicing differently.
Yep.
I'm already not trying to fix and rescue people in the way that I was. The motivations for doing what I do have shifted.
Yep.
So rather than needing to do these things so that I feel a certain way, or needing to fix people so that they love me, so that I feel loved.
Meet that little need underneath there. Yeah.
Yeah, I've met that one already. I love me now. And previously, when I didn't love me, if someone else did, I couldn't feel it.
Oh.
It was water off a duck's back. So my patients would show appreciation. My family would give me love, my friends, and I was numb to it.
Yeah,
my heart
right.
was closed. And now I can really feel it and accept it and expect it, but not in an unhealthy way, and give it to myself as well.
Yep.
So I'm not looking to this as a way to get people to love me better.
Yeah.
I'm looking at this because I'm really interested in it. I'm really excited about it. I really want to learn more. I love learning. And even the journey, even if the journey is just learning more, that's a big win for me.
Yeah.
Because I feel like learning's one of the parts of my life that really lights me up.
Same.
That and fishing. But but learning's great. And then how do I avoid going into this codependent pattern of trying to build something so that I get some sort of satisfaction out of winning? I guess that part of the story I haven't seen yet, Rick. I know that I'm not on the same track I was before.
Yeah.
Because my goals of having, I'd have a vision board with all these signs of material wealth on it.
Yeah.
And, other measures of success as well in terms of pictures of healthy me and stuff. But I had a really warped view of what I wanted in life and why I wanted it.
Yeah.
And I've seen in the generation before me that all of that stuff can be attained, but it doesn't necessarily lead to happiness.
Yep.
And
you've had the experience.
And I've experienced it for myself.
That, yeah.
Yeah. So, so I believe that through being a lot more realistic, a lot more humble,
which is that nice balance of the arrogance, isn't it?
Yeah, for me it's big. For me it's big. And so by being a lot more humble, and a lot more realistic, a lot less in denial,
yep.
I'm going to have a different outcome. And then,
I concur.
and if that outcome's not perfect, then that's fine too.
Yeah. I really agree, because like it's the culmination of both the experience and the work that you've done. Like those two things mesh together to have this. I think for you, it's a really embedded, integrated, felt sense. And I think your awareness muscle is so well built over time that you'll pick the pattern a lot earlier if it starts to sneak in. And it probably will.
Yeah, it probably, will.
Yeah, but you'll call it early.
And I'll call it early. And I've got people around me to help, show me too. And that's a huge thing. Having that scaffolding that you referred to earlier, having that around me is really, really valuable. But yeah, with all of that, I don't feel like. I think when I did this before, I was focused on the destination.
Yep.
And right now, I don't know what that's going to look like. I don't care. Right now, I feel like it's more of an adventure. And that's the bit that I'm excited about, just the journey.
Well said. Can we drop the mics even if they're on a stand?
Yeah. Sorry if I break it.
Yeah, I just think that's a beautiful bow in it. I didn't know what the answer to that question was going to be, but it exceeded expectations.
Perfect.
Because we caught up for coffee just before you pulled the trigger on this, and we sort of had the same discussion of like,
yeah, why am I doing it?
Why? What's really underneath it?
Yeah.
And even the fact that you're open to having that conversation just shows that the work's been put in. I'm not going in blind, led by my unconscious need.
Well, one thing I definitely learned to not make a decision when I was feeling, an emotionally based decision, a snap decision.
Yeah.
Like I can make emotionally based decisions, but I don't have to make them immediately. And so I sat with the discomfort and the questioning around this decision for some time.
Yeah.
And in the end, I made it excited and hopeful. And yeah, I still am excited and hopeful.
That's cool, because how I normally end every podcast is just that question of like, what's exciting you?
Oh, well, the future.
The future.
Yeah, this week, this year, the rest of my life. Yeah, I'm excited again. I'm no longer miserable and despairing.
Yeah.
I'm hopeful.
Me too. Yeah,
Thanks.
That's good. That's good. Mate, thank you.
Thank you.
We didn't know where it was going to go with this. We just kind of freestyled. Yeah. But appreciate your honesty and your articulation and your clarity. It's really easy to have a conversation with you. So thanks for just bringing authentic Chris.
Thanks, man. Thanks for getting me through this.
Yeah. See, it wasn't so bad.
Wasn't so bad.
All right. Thanks, mate.
Bye.
Well, hey, before you head off, I just wanted to say thanks for listening to that conversation. If you enjoyed it, I'd really appreciate if you followed the podcast on Spotify, left a review, or even just left a comment and let me know what you got from the podcast. Those little bits of interaction mean a lot. We're not doing any promo or ads, or we're not selling anything on this podcast. So the goal is just to get these conversations into more people's ears. So if you've got a spare 30 seconds, really appreciate those little steps that help this grow. Okay, we'll see you in the next one.